Alright boys, so Summer Musashi or Berserker Musashi, whatever you want to call her, is coming back over to the NA version of the game, and I refuse to sit by and let people slander my girl over here saying that, oh, because Space Ishtar or Summer Kama or even Summer Ibuki next year are coming out, she's a completely worthless servant. No, that is not at all true. Summer Musashi is still very, very, very strong. She's really good for CQs, you know, being able to pierce invincibility, do really good damage as a Berserker, but you can still use her as a farmer. In fact, I did a couple of setups in this video just farming Berserkers to show how good her refund actually is. Because I mentioned in yesterday's video, I was like, well, you know, she can have some struggles sometimes against like Berserkers or some weird nodes because she doesn't have a battery, but that doesn't mean she can't do them, right? Like my Musashi is only NP2, but I still used her when she was at NP1, and she's only NP1 over on JP, and I got similar results, right? She is still a very, very good unit because instead of having like good NP gain and a battery, she focuses on just having astronomically ridiculous NP gain, where she will just refund like 92% against Berserkers, which is really ridiculous if you view people like, say, Space Ishtar, who can kind of struggle to do that, or say Summer Ibuki, who can't put up the same results as I use her at the same NP2 level on JP, and she still struggles to get like looping against Berserkers consistently at the very least. So Summer Musashi should not be downplayed because it's like, oh, she doesn't have a battery. She still has the raw NP to compete and be a very good farming servant. It's just that with like 90++ nodes, you really do want people with batteries so they kind of have that utility and they make your team setups that much easier. So she does lose out there, but while she will lose out against some farming servants for very weird nodes, she will beat them out when it comes to, say, challenge quests, right? Because she is really, really good into, say, the Summer 5 CQ, which has all these random effects that you can completely ignore with Summer Musashi because she just pierces invincibility, doesn't care what buffs they do, because doesn't care what type they are either, because she will just run through all of them like an absolute freight train. But with that being said, let's actually talk about what she does so I can show you what she does. So when you look at her hits over here, she may not look like the most important, impressive servant, right? She's got double buster cards, double arts cards with 3 hits a pop, 0.51% NP gain, which doesn't exactly give you the illusion that she's a really good looping servant, but let me just tell you right now, that is an illusion. She is really good. They are masquerading how good she is at looping her NP like an absolute madman. 5 hits on the extra attack. It's like this servant was built for me. She's got a quick card, but realistically, who cares about it? Even with the riding passive, it's not really going to be doing anything. Although the buster cards are being backed up by a nice 12% buster buff, which can allow them to do some nice crits if you're providing stars with, like, say, double 20/30s on your Castorias or something along those lines. But really with Summer Musashi, it is the skills that pay the bills. Primarily, it's her second skill, but before we talk about that, we got to talk about the first skill over here, which does get undervalued a little bit because it's just 1 hit of evasion and it's just 1 turn of 50% crit damage on the low 4-turn cooldown. Now, some people will be like, oh, it's just 1 hit of evasion, but there have been so many times where I've been in more difficult content that I needed just that 1 guaranteed hit that I could live, because she has other survivability, but I just needed to guarantee that I could just make it through a turn, and 1 hit is generally good enough, especially when you have 3 servants, because it's not often that they're going to target down 1 servant 3 different times, right? So I just needed to guarantee that I could get through the turn, and the crit is a nice bonus, because I do like to use 20/30s on my Castories, because they kind of already refund their NP and kind of just do a bunch of arch chains to get their stuff anyway. I don't see a point of using Prisma Cosmos, so I use 20/30, so I have a lot of stars floating around, and when she can get them, she can actually do some pretty nice crits, and it'll be a little bit easier when, say, Lady Avalon comes out, because she's functionally just Arts Merlin that can pop her NP at turn 1, so she's really good at having stars for, say, someone like Musashi, so she doesn't have to fight for them, because unfortunately, she does not have her own star weight. So I understand this is not the most broken OP skill of all time, but it is still very good for her kit. It complements other things that she's doing very well. If they are going to buff something, I do hope they buff this one and just, I don't know, throw something else on there, but unfortunately, it's on a 4-turn cooldown, so it's kind of hard to throw really insane effects on this without making it too broken, but I do hope they do kind of touch this up in the future. Maybe like a little bit of NP damage, maybe a toss or like a 20 to 30% battery, and then people might respect her a lot more, but even then, I still think she's really good. But here is the skill of the hour. Skill 2. This is just absolutely ridiculous. It is just, the main thing is increasing her NP gain by 50% for 3 turns. That is the main thing that you're getting from this skill, because it's going to allow her to refund her art's AoE NP like an absolute mad lad. It's got only 4 hits on it, but that's all she needs with the 50% NP gain from this skill, all the NP gain and arts buffs that Castoria is giving her. She's going to be off to the races. It does have this nice little effect if you are going to use her in more difficult content, that it does double the number of her hits on her arts cards, meaning they functionally become 6-hit arts cards whenever you use it on that turn, which again will insanely help her refund on her NP, although unfortunately she doesn't really have an insane overcharge effect. So like, even though you could get to like 200-300% NP potentially with these insane arts refunds, it's probably not going to matter all that much because her overcharge is not the best thing ever. Maybe they go through and they give her like a damage mod against sabers as well as on top of that skill seal or the NP seal, and that'll probably make her a lot better. But it is kind of nice because if you don't have her NP ready to go for some reason during a challenge quest and you do have her arts cards, it can allow her to get to her NP very, very quickly. And it also does increase the damage of her arts cards for that turn as well, which is kind of nice, I suppose, if you need that little bit of extra damage. But if damage is what you need, then you got the third skill over here, which this is what makes her so good into challenge quests. Now, I used to meme on the fact that she deals 5,000 damage to herself, and I'm like, dude, you are a berserker who only has like 13,000 HP, right? You don't have that much to begin with. You're dropping down to 8k, and that's after foes. And you do not have the HP to be sparing, but I'm like, well, in all of my time using her with double Castoria, who gives her so much survivability, her own guts that she has on this skill, and her own one hit of evasion, generally, as long as you're playing, like, relatively smart, like, not Miss Crane big brain strategies, but you're not just wasting all of your skills for no reason, which, why would you be wasting them for no reason if you're in a CQ? That's all about, like, you know, managing your stuff and managing your resources and trying to beat the boss and overcome them with whatever gimmick they've got. So as long as you're not doing something dumb like that, she actually will be fine. And then she'll give herself really good offensive buffs here. She reduces all enemies' defense by 30% for 3 turns. Then she gives herself a 30% attack buff, and then she pierces invincibility for 3 turns. So dodges, invincibilities, which are pretty much the only damage cut things that bosses have aside from, well, raw damage cut, defense, and like special resistances. Aside from those, she could pretty much pierce the most common forms of survivability that the bosses are going to throw your way. And unlike, say, someone like Ibuki, who has to remove the buffs, and we have bosses with unremovable buffs, she can always get around them because there, at least right now, hasn't been a counter for like piercing units, right? There's not like a super invincibility that's like not solemn defense, or like a super dodge that's like not solemn defense and doesn't allow itself to get pierced or something along those lines. We don't have that yet, but you know, who knows what they're going to use. So this is still very, very strong, and if you're using her in more difficult content, it allows you to really just slam the boss because you're not only getting the attack but you're also getting the defense down, which is really increasing your damage. But even if you're not using this in a challenge quest setting, it's still very strong when you're going into, say, farming and stuff, because the attack buff you can carry through all 3 nodes. And if you're going to use her in some weird, say, farming setup where she has to like clear the first wave for a 90++ node and they're really big, I don't know, it's like some random 3-wave enemy, which I do believe we have on JP with the 1.2 million MHX over there, so it could be good for that if you just need her to clear that and she gets her second NP. I don't know why you would do that over like any of the other options you got, but it's still at least nice for that. Like, it could still be used in weird farming setups, and again, it's just good for her wave 1 as well. Or if you're really cheeky and you've got her like NP5, you could just store that for wave 3, I guess, if you really need to do the damage. But at that point, you have an NP5 Musashi. I really don't think damage is going to be the issue. One of the other things I think they could buff on this unit is probably going to be her NP, because aside from the fact that it is really good because it's an AoE arts NP with 4 hits on it, that's generally going to be enough. The effects on it are really lackluster. Like 30% crit down to all the enemies for 3 turns, like, yeah, I guess it does technically count as some form of survivability, because reducing the enemy's ability to like crit you into oblivion does technically mean you'll live more hits, but she's a berserker. She's not going to be living hits anyway. Like, she's already going to get 1 to 2 shot by random enemies, so it doesn't really help her out that much. And then her overcharge, like I mentioned earlier, is just a chance to seal all Saber enemies NPs for 1 turn, which I get, it's like thematic for Summer 4 with all like the different swordsman stuff, but I wish it was like a damage mod for any Sabers that you were encountering. countering, because even though that'd be a little bit restrictive, it does make her extra good into, say, Saber matchups, right? It's kind of like MHX Alter, who, before she got her buff, it was like, well, she's a DPS Berserker, which is really good, but if there's a Saber boss, she's extra good, right? It just gives her that little bit of that advantage, right? And they just didn't really extend that to Musashi. But then again, year 4, some of the units were still a little bit wonky. Like, when Ruler Artoria released, she was a little goofy. They kind of fixed her up from Summer 4 as well, but it's just one of those things that I think year 4 experienced, where some of the units were like, had weird oddities about them. Like, even say Summer Lambda, right? The Melta Lilith that came out for that year as well. She had the weird gimmick where she only has the attack buff that's really big for 1 turn, even though she's a really good looping serve. And it just seems that, like, everybody in that year had, like, one little thing that might have been a little bit off about them, despite how good they actually were. But yeah, this unit is going to be on rate up. I believe when this video goes up, she should already be live. And I'm not telling you to drain your bank account going for this servant. If you really want, you know, Summer Kama, if you want to go for that Avenger because you're going to be using her for farming, she's probably going to be the better option, because in the long run, for say more difficult nodes, just having access to that battery and her having pretty much a free special damage mod, as long as you can land the charm, which should not be that difficult, as long as you can do that, she's going to be looking really, really good. But this is also a servant that you really don't want to pass up. She is definitely really strong, especially if arts is the main thing you're doing. If you're really just using art servants, this is a valuable servant to have, not only for looping certain nodes, but especially for going into CQs, because she has definitely just taken a lot of those CQs for me and put it on easy mode. I mean, for like the last year on NA, pretty much any time a challenge node came out, I just farmed it with Summer Musashi, basically. People in chat would be like, oh, you could do this, that, or the other thing, but I was like, nah, I'm just gonna run in there and I'm just gonna farm it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for all that daily FGO content, because even though I'm out here on vacation, I still gotta go ahead and talk about some of these summer units that are coming back, because this is ridiculous. Lesengo thought they could blindside me, but no, you can't catch me off guard that easily, because I'm always ready. But on that note, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day.